Imagine this. It's Monday, the last sprint of your project. And you just finished the planning, and you know that you need to deliver like 2 bags, fix 2 bags, and just edit and add some stuff to documentation. You feel good. It is achievable, and, well, you're also excited for the release and excited for the new project that will come later. You feel good. It's Monday, but it's a good Monday. Okay? On Tuesday, engineering manager comes into a room, awesome, and she says, you know, it would be great if we run this just before the release, if we run it through security. And in this case, exactly, and in this case, it would be great, means we must do it. So you go to the meeting with security team, and they ask you questions, and they ask questions about, oh, you can hear how I breathe. Okay, this is not the question they ask. They ask questions about the design, the documentation that you haven't finished yet, and, well, after this meeting, you end up with this. And if you ask me, I also have no idea what the snail is doing up there. It's a nightmare. It's a complete nightmare. And my friends, I'll be honest with you, I've been in this situation way too many times. And, you know, after the release, we would have this wonderful meeting called Project Retrospective. Do you know this meeting? And we would all agree that having security review in the last sprint just before the release is a nightmare. And the moment we finished the meeting, although we all agreed on that, the moment we finished the meeting, we would completely forget about it, and next time the situation will haunt us, and it would repeat itself. Last year, after, 8 years of writing software, I decided to switch to another team, and I joined security team. And during my transition from software engineer to security engineer, I, read some books, took some online classes on cybersecurity, and when I started working with engineering teams, I gained this new perspective, And I realized that there are some things that you can do, and there are low-hanging fruit, that you can do to improve the security of your product. So today, I will share those the lowest hanging fruit of security. But in the second part of my presentation, I will share with you a little piece of theory that completely blew my mind. Okay? Are you with me? Wow, I even got a response. Okay, so first of all, a strawberry. Sanitize the input. You shall never trust what you get from the user. Sanitization means to clean up the input from the potentially executable code. And we're lucky because we have SANITIZE helper in Rails, and for Ruby we have SANITIZE gem. So in reality, it is fairly easy to sanitize the input, because of course sometimes you want to allow the user to, insert a link or style their description. So it is fairly easy to do, but it can actually have a huge impact with preventing attacks like cross-site scripting, remote code execution, yes. So I said, nothing controversial. low-hanging fruit. Sanitize all the data that you get from the user. Another low-hanging fruit, a blueberry, validate the data. You need to understand and you need to remember that the database is the most important asset you have. You need to protect it, because people will forgive you if you cannot access your service for 15 hours, but they will not forgive you if you lose their cat's pictures. So make sure to validate all the data you get from the user and all the data that you want to save in the database. So we tend to validate only a few fields. It's important to validate all of them. Low-hanging fruit. And with those, by implementing sanitization and validation, you will reduce the risk of cross-site scripting, remote code executions, SQL injection, and many more. The other thing, no credentials in the repo. And I know that some of you can have this question in your mind, but for testing it's okay. Well, it's not okay. Because we tend to forget, by credentials I mean username, password, API token, access keys. So we don't want that in the repositories because, well, you forget about it easily because we have so much work to do. And then you add another resource to this testing key or testing token. And then you lose control over what this token is responsible for, what resources can be accessed with it. And trust me, you don't want to wake up to a lovely email from a security researcher who found in a testing repository an API token that would enable the attacker to see the whole organization or in the CI service that somebody uses, and effectively to just freeze the deploys of the whole product. So no credentials in your repo. The good news is, though, that many of these things you can delegate to the machines and to robots. I really wanted to use a robot emoji in this presentation, and I'm glad I managed to do it. You may ask me, okay, but, well, I can see it's not a strawberry, I can see it's not a blueberry, it's a pear, and pear, it's not as low-hanging fruit, but it's still reachable. And it's a pear because it will require you to talk to people in your company who can spend money. Because by delegating your work to machines, I mean implementing scanning tools. The most popular scanning tools are SAST and DAST tools. DAST stands for Dynamic Application Security Testing, and it's a service that interacts with your front end. I mean, not your front end, sorry. The front end of your web app. And it feeds the front end with malicious input and looks for the response. Sometimes it finds something, so it will report to you a potential vulnerability. The other type of scanners are SAST tools, which is static application security testing. And this tool interacts with your code base, and it goes through your code base and searches for potential vulnerabilities. With SAST, it's pretty nice because you can have those tools integrated into your workflow on GitHub or GitLab, and when you create a PR, when you commit new commits, you can get instant feedback. Oh, here here you committed a credential, or here you introduce a potential SQL injection. So these tools are awesome, and I think we should use it because security is hard enough. And I mean, development is hard enough, and adding to that security is like a big pill to swallow. So whenever you have a chance to automate your security, you should definitely invest into it, and I highly encourage you to do so. Okay, so I've been speaking for 10 minutes already. How are you feeling? Like, I was right that low-hanging fruit, right? Nothing super controversial, right? Yeah? Okay, I'm so glad that I can see your faces because it's much more reassuring. Okay, so now I will take a sip. I hope you didn't hear it. Okay, so now I will share something that completely blew my mind when I learned about it. And I hope it will, I don't know, spark a fire in your heart. Okay, so before I tell you about it, we need to be honest. What is the problem with security? Well, security is just this ocean of topics. There is no one security. And if I asked each of you, is your product secure? Is your app secure? You all would give me different answers. Security is such a wide topic. It's application security, infrastructure security, IT security, password management, secret management, phishing, vulnerabilities, so much. So I think it is a little bit unfair to like, we have so much work to do as developers. We need to write good code, test it, make it accessible, and then somewhere at the end we need to take care of security. And it's a big task because security is such a big ocean of topics that is pretty much overwhelming and definitely intimidating. Look, when I was like mentoring like younger people, I knew that I tend to have to use the developers lingo that we all have, right? Especially if you're not an English native speaker. For example, I'm Polish, so I would use English words for like commit or push, like as Polish words, which made me completely like very difficult to understand for people who didn't know this lingo, right? People from security use acronyms for everything. And all of those acronyms, I kid you not, include either C or S. So good luck. And they do use them as verbs. So I spent many months of my first months in the team, like Googling every day 3 to 5 different acronyms. Security is intimidating, and security experts are partly to blame. So we have this ocean of topics, right? And security community agrees that the problem is that when you have an application and you try to secure it, there is an infinite amount of threats. Okay, infinite. This is why it's so hard. But, and this is the mind-blowing part. Are you with me? All of those threats, this ocean, can be assigned to 3 categories. Only 3. And the good news for you is you already know the acronym, because those categories are confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which are called the CIA triad. I will not make a spy joke, because the only spies I like to talk about are Spice Girls. 90s kids, I knew you would understand it. Okay, so this is mind-blowing, people. Let's not be distracted by pop culture icons of 90s, because 3 categories, infinite number of threats and 3 categories? Wow! Before I tell you, though, what is so groundbreaking about it and completely blew me away, let us establish the definitions of those 3 things, so we all are talking about the same thing. Confidentiality. We want secrets to be secret. If I send an email to you, we only want to be the only person who can access them. We don't want anyone to read in between those emails. We want our passwords to be secret as well. Integrity means that we get what we expect. If you log into your Twitter account, you want to see all of the tweets that you have ever tweeted. You don't want to see no tweets, right? This is integrity. Availability is that we can access the information always. I mean, after the talk, we know that 100% is not the goal, 99.99% of the time. But this is basically availability. So, okay, we know that. We know what confidentiality, integrity, availability stands for. The infinite amount of threats. So what? Why was it so exciting to me? Why did I come from Berlin to talk to you about it? And why did I think that it's worth it? Because, my friends, the CIA triad can completely transform the way we approach security. Because instead of focusing on those threats that we cannot even count, we need to focus on only 3 things: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And how do you do that? For each project, for each user story, ask this one question: how can the CAI of this project be broken? And it is a beautiful concept, because it will work for every technology you will ever work with. No matter if you're back-end, front-end, mobile, DevOps, you always can ask this question: how can the confidentiality, integrity, and availability be broken? And of course, those questions will vary depending on what you are working on, but the baseline stays the same. And in order to make it slightly more clear to you, I will now share some examples of those questions. For confidentiality, you can ask, who can see this resource? How do we store credentials? But also a confidentiality question is, what do we put in our logs? Do we log any sensitive data? Any tokens, usernames, etc.? For integrity, of course, the basic question is, who can create, update, and delete this resource? But also, if something bad happened, is there a way for us to see a malicious actor deleting all our customers' data? Do we have a way to monitor that? Do we have the way to alert them about it? Another integrity question: what happens when malicious actor sends malicious data to our API or via some form? And availability, of course, when I talk about availability, everyone is like, oh, availability threat, DDoS attack, distributed denial of service, so this is infrastructure. We don't have to care. But the truth is that we as developers are highly responsible for availability because we introduce other products to our product. Which means we create new dependencies. And now the great question for availability is, what will happen with our product if this wonderful piece of software that helps us manage feature flags is down? Here I have an anecdote. So I don't know, like a few years ago, I think 7 or 8, I had the pleasure of implementing billing system. Have anyone ever had billing? Yeah, okay. So if you sell for Europe, sell in Europe, your product in Europe, to a customer who's also a business, there is this wonderful tax identification number called VAT ID. Do you know that? Do you? Yeah, okay. So, and what happens then if your customer provides it, then they pay for your product less. They pay without the tax. So, you don't only have to accept this VAT number, but you need to validate it, right? So, I don't know, I hope it has changed, but 8 years ago, in order to validate the VAT number, you had to send a request to a European system called VIES. Anyone familiar with it? Yeah, okay. And yeah, and they would, respond with, yeah, this is a valid number. No, it's not valid. And then it would influence the price. So what happened was that we had a very successful launch of the product, and yeah, we got rate limited, like 1 hour in. So what would we do with that? Like, we cannot just close and say, oh, we just launched a product, sorry, our website is unavailable, you cannot create new orders. Because who does that? Like, it's such a waste of money. So we had to, luckily we were prepared for that, and we had to find a workaround around the situation. But this is just an example of availability question that you can ask. And also, when you run a migration, you need to know like how long this migration takes and what will happen if this will influence the availability of your product. Asking those questions, asking the CIA questions will help you create much more secure solutions and software. And I encourage you, of course, you can do it for a big project, you can do it for a user story. I encourage you to do it for the whole project early in the design phase, which is a nice segue to my last point, shifting security left. So if you talk to any application security expert and you ask them what's new, what's hot in the industry, they will tell you about shifting security left. Because, well, security experts realize that having the security review just before the release is not experience for anyone, not only for developers, because it adds work and it's much more stressful, but also for security engineers. having spoken to many of them, I know that they would love to be enablers. They would love to be helpers who help you, sorry for repetition, create the best software. But when you talk to them at the end of your process, then they sometimes need to block you, and it sucks for them too. So right now, this hot topic, shift security left, means basically that when you look at software development lifecycle, and it has traditionally 6 phases: analyze, design, develop, test, release, and maintain. Instead of doing the security review at the end of the process, you want to shift it left, which means engage with security team in the design phase. And you can use CIA Triad as a basic framework of approaching this. And I do encourage you to do so, because you'll be happier and they will be much happier. Also, what is important is that any change that touches the code is expensive. And changes that are made in the code that is already on production are super expensive. And they will definitely take much more time than you anticipated. So by shifting security left, by talking to security and tackling security in the design phase, the changes are fast, cheap, and easy, because usually they happen on a piece of paper or a digital piece of paper. But it's much easier to do so in the design phase. There is no week where we don't hear about a data breach or vulnerability that is in a very popular library. And customers look at that, and they don't want to risk their reputation, their money, their data. Therefore, security becomes more and more relevant topic when it comes to sales negotiations. People don't want to spend money on products that are not necessarily secure. And I think not only that is important, but also, if we're engineers, we need to, I think, acknowledge that the careless times of move fast and break things are over, because our customers, our users trust us with very personal, sometimes even intimate data. And we, as engineers, need to, I think we owe them the effort of doing our best to create the most secure solutions for our users. I hope my talk brought security a little bit closer to you, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon, and thank you for listening.
Wiktoria, thank you so much. Plenty of questions. Please vote. Please ask more questions. First one from Stefan. What are your thoughts about storing credentials in encrypted form, as, for example, possible in Rails?
I don't have much experience in that. Secret management is a huge topic anyway. If you have, we can discuss it later. But overall, I have no experience with that. We moved from storing any kind of credentials to AWS Secret Manager. So, yeah.
Okay. Then there's a question from the well-known Anonymous. How do you apply CIA Triad to a big and old code base?
Step by step. Overall, in order to... I have so many ideas. Please talk to me, anonymous. But the thing is that what you want, you want to automate security. Therefore, for example, scanners would be a huge help if you have a big code base of legacy code. Also, the CIA triad should be a part of your designing process, and you can do it by, in a way, injecting it into your design, product briefs, design documentation, etc. So it, of course, won't happen, overnight, but there are ways to make your software development lifecycle more secure.
Excellent. You said, this is from Threat, you said, let the machines do the work. What are your favorite libraries, GEMS services that provide security analysis and or monitoring?
We used commercial tools for that. So I don't have any open source examples to give here.
One is, how do I remove credentials from the Git history of an active project with about a dozen people currently working on it? Send help.
Yeah, this is a huge problem, and we went through it. We went through it 2 years ago. And it's a huge effort, but it's definitely worth it. There are ways to do it. Please, you can talk to me about it. But definitely, you need to have, overall, you need to have a consensus in your engineering department that this is something you need to focus as one of the security priorities for, I don't know, half of a year or something. And then you, of course, choose the right provider for security management, secret management, and gradually you move away from those credentials.
Secret management sounds a lot like Mordor stuff. Matthias is asking, can you recommend specific Dust or SAST services or tools? There are plenty. I have the most experience with Detectify as the Dust, and SAST was made in Polaris. Yes, I remember the names. Wow. But there are plenty, and I think you should go through the research with your security team. It's money, so you need to choose wisely and what's the best for your product and for your needs. Great. Manuel has a question. How can we guarantee secure coding practices in an organization with hundreds of developers?
How can we guarantee, what is engineering? Do we have any... So it's a huge problem, Manuel, and I completely empathize with you because it is a challenge. But the thing is that, we need to... I think maybe for some reason we take this word too lightly. We can aspire to be engineers, I think. And there is no, security needs to be the part of engineering because the data that we have access to and the impact we have on real people's life is just too big. And so I think it's a mix of cultural, priorities and engineering priorities, and also tools that can help remind people about security during their practice. So implementing SAST scans into PRs, having secure development lifecycle, etc. It's a river. I can go on and go on.
Still a couple of quick ones, I think. What are your thoughts on third-party authentication versus implementing your own?
Like you should always, everything is a risk, and you need to manage this risk. There's no one good answer for everyone. Like you need to, you need to threat model and think about the risk. Like what's the lesser evil, basically.
And an honest question from anyone. As a lazy person, is there a VS Code plugin for this?
Great question. Juan? Juan? No, what's the name?
It is anyone.
Anyone. Great question. Because if you have, for example, if you use some SAS or DAS tools, for Polaris, definitely there is a VS Code plugin, so you can have it integrated into your VS Code, yes.
I just want to take this, I don't know if you already answered, but what would you recommend to handle secrets in production? Yeah, definitely don't put them into a repository. Like there is, I forgot. Like we have a secret manager from AWS, but also there is Vault, I think, FAULT, if I'm not mistaken, and they have like solutions for that as well. At this point, Wiktoria, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.